Hey guys, Kraig here, and welcome to a GameMaker Studio 2 tutorial. This is part 2 of 2 for the smooth movement tutorial. So what makes smooth movement? Last time we talked about keyboard input. You can see it in this player code right here. We're just simple WASD keyboard input. We talked about computing a speed for this particular game frame that's based on the delta time variable. And once we get that speed and that keyboard input, we know where we're trying to go and how fast. We come down here and we compute the X and the Y direction with these length to your X and length to your Y functions to actually move in that speed and direction. So we have some pretty smooth movement going here already, but we need to be able to do more. We need to be able to handle collisions, and that's what this video is going to be about. So if you remember last time, our object wall, we just did one thing. We marked it as solid. So make sure that that's the case this time too, because the function we're going to use specifically looks for solid objects when figuring out if there's a collision or not. If we want our player here to be able to move and collide with the wall without just passing through it like he was last time, we actually only need to add one check. And that is basically this if statement against one function called place free. So if place free, and we need some X and Y to fill in here, we're going to move. So what is the X and the Y we're going to fill in? Well, of course, it's the X and the Y we want to move to, which is basically X plus this length to your X we compute, and Y plus this length to your Y we compute. So we can go ahead and do that, and we'll just do that by setting these to be variables here. So if we know we want to move to X plus our length to your X, our variable var X target, the place we're trying to get to, is going to be equal to X plus length to your X. So kind of the same thing we were trying to do before, just in a variable now. And then var Y target is Y plus the length to your Y. And now we can go ahead and check those. So place free X target, Y target. Then we can go ahead and actually move to that position. So place free is basically just taking the bounding box of your player, sticking it at that new position, and then saying, okay, is this bounding box colliding with a solid bounding box? If it is, place is not free, returns false, we're not going to move there. If it isn't, well, it's free, let's go there. So if the place is free, X now equals X target, and Y now equals Y target. And we're done. But let's test this out. There's a problem with this type of collision, and you can see it if we walk right up into the wall. So I'm holding down W just to go up, and now I'm going to press D. Uh-oh, we have an issue here. I'm not moving at all, even though I'm pressing D, and it really seems like intuitively as a player, I would expect to be kind of like sliding along the wall to the right, and I'm not. So what we're going to do is go ahead and implement this technique that some pretty funny guys at the studio Butterscotch Shenanigans, they're the guys that make Crashlands and Levelhead, they like to call it angle sweeps because, well, that's kind of what it does. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. We're going to try to implement this. It really does make the movement much smoother when you're colliding with walls. Basically what you're going to do is set up a for loop that checks angles, bigger and bigger angles, and sees, okay, is there a place free anywhere along those angles, those directions I've checked? If there is, we're going to go there. If there's not, well, sorry, you're definitely stuck. We can keep the keyboard and the pixels of this frame code exactly the same, and the movement code is actually going to stay mostly the same. We're just going to wrap it in a for loop that basically changes this one variable, this dir variable. And we're going to do that by just starting with a little for loop. So for var I equals 0, I less than or equal to 80. Because you don't want to check at a full 90 degrees. Otherwise, pressing up might cause you to slide totally to the left, which doesn't seem right. You don't want to do that. At the most you would want to do going up is like, kind of slightly angle that way and go. So we'll check up until 80. And what we're going to do is add to I some sweep interval. So how big of an angle do you want to check every iteration of the loop? We'll just go with 10 degrees for now. So let's wrap all this up inside of our for loop, indent it. What we're going to go ahead and do now, like I said, is keep all this code the same, We're going to figure out what is the direction we actually want to be checking here. So we've computed var dir equals point direction from 0, 0 to the x dir, y dir. That's our vector we're looking at. How do we factor in this angle sweep? Well, at the moment, that I value is the angle that we're sweeping to, but it's only in the positive direction right now. So it's like, say we're moving to the right, it's checking bigger and bigger angles up to 80 degrees, but it's not checking angles in this direction. So we also need to take the negative value for I and add that to our direction as well. So let's actually pull this code back out, because this direction, based on our keyboard, is not going to change. So we put that there. What is going to change is the value we're adding to dir, and that is either going to be the positive I value or the negative I value. And just to make sure we don't have to write a bunch of extra code, we're actually going to wrap this in another loop here. So var n, let's just call it, is equal to -1. And we want n to be less than or equal to 1. So this is going to be a multiplier. And n is going to plus equal 2. So this loop is basically only going to loop twice. It's going to be -1, and then it's going to be 1. And what we're going to do with n is we're going to multiply I by n. And so if it's -1, and say I is like 30. -1 times 30, -30. So we're going to check dir plus -30. Say our direction is 90 to begin with. That's going to check it at 60. And then, this loop's going to go again. We're going to be at 1. So it's going to be 30 times 1 is 30. So then if our dir was, what did we say, 90? It'll be 120. So, checking this bigger and bigger swath of angles. So n times I, there's our little multiplier. Make another variable here called modified dir. And that's going to be equal to, like we said, n times I plus dir. And down here, when we actually compute the y target, x target stuff, we're going to use this modified dir instead of the original. But the interesting thing about this is because our angle sweeps start at 0, this value is actually 0. So our first set of checks is actually just against the original dir. So the first thing we do is try to move in that original direction, and if it doesn't work, then we're going to start sweeping and try to find something that does work. So one last bit of code we want to add here before we finish off is we want to make sure that we break out of these loops if we do move successfully. And that's so that we don't jump like 20 times in one game frame when we really only wanted to move our position once. So if the place is free, we go X and Y, we want to break. So we get out of this inside loop. But that doesn't get us out of this outside loop. And so a way we could try to take care of this is to just put in like a little Boolean flag that's true or false. It's true if you broke out, it's false if you didn't. And we'll just call that var moved successfully. It's false to start. And what we're going to do is check inside this outer loop, but after the inner loop finishes, we're going to say if moved successfully, we want to break. And that'll get us out of this exterior loop. And then this way, we only move our position once, no matter, this could loop all the way through and we never move, so it never breaks, and that's fine. But if it does move, we'll break. Actually, sorry, no, we won't, because we need to actually set that. Moved successfully is true if we moved, and if not, it just stays false. So let's go ahead and give this a try, see what happens. And we're going to press and hold W, we hit the wall, and we're going to press D and A. And we slide right along that wall, thanks to our angle sweeps. So there you guys have it. Smooth movement, smooth collisions. You're not going to get hung up on the walls anymore. If this code is a little bit confusing, feel free to just run through it in your head a couple more times. Just think about the fact that we're checking bigger and bigger angles for places to move. Another thing you might want to try on your own at some point is like pull this code out into its own function. Computing the pixels of this frame, you would just pass in pixels per second and you could figure it out. Another thing you could pull into a function is really all of this movement code here. This could work for anything that wants to move. As long as you have a pixels of this frame in a direction, you could get anything to move using that code. So if you guys want to try that on your own, feel free, go for it. I'll stretch this code out here a little bit if you want to try to get it on your screen. Let's see here. Alright, that should be the whole chunk. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you next time.